Today, we're going to dig into a historical paradox, one that kind of flips the script on what we think of as American patriotism. We're going to head all the way back to the country's founding to ask a pretty critical question. Are some of today's so-called patriots actually channeling the spirit of the very people the original patriots fought against? Let's get into it.
It seems like such a simple question, doesn't it? But honestly, the answer has been debated since the ink was still wet on the Constitution. Is it about loyalty or is it about protest? Is it about respecting authority or questioning it? To figure that out, we've got to go back to the very beginning.
To really get a handle on where we are today, we first need to understand what the word patriot actually meant back during the American Revolution.
Okay, now what's really fascinating here is the mindset this reveals. The patriots of 1776, they weren't just rebels for the sake of it, they were deep, fundamental skeptics of power. They actually believed it was their duty to question authority. Their whole idea was that your rights come from somewhere higher up, not from a king, not from a government. And that meant everyone, especially leaders, had to follow the law, no exceptions.
But of course, the Patriots weren't the only ones with strong opinions. They had some seriously powerful opposition. The Loyalists, sometimes called Tories, who, well, they stayed loyal to the British Crown.
And this, right here, lays out that fundamental clash just perfectly. Where the Patriots were skeptical, the Loyalists showed deference. Where Patriots saw criticizing leaders as a basic right, the Loyalists saw it as actual treason. And while Patriots believed in the rule of law over everybody, Loyalists believed the state, the king, had the ultimate authority. Getting this divide is the key to understanding everything else we're about to talk about.
So, how does this conflict from the 1700s play out today? Well, let's start with a modern question about loyalty.
You've probably heard this in our modern political world, right? This argument that people should be fired or punished in some way for showing disrespect to a president. It basically frames personal loyalty to a leader as some kind of civic or even professional duty.
Now, contrast that idea with this. This is what one of the most important patriots, Thomas Paine, called King George III in his world-changing pamphlet, Common Sense, the royal brute. I mean, it doesn't get a whole lot more disrespectful than that, does it? For that founding generation, the right to criticize, to even mock their leaders, wasn't just, okay. It was absolutely essential.
And this is the crucial point, the real distinction. The loyalist view, that demands personal loyalty to a leader. That's the mindset of a subject living in a monarchy. But the patriot view, the whole foundation of the United States, demands loyalty to the law and the Constitution. That, right there, is the definition of a citizen in a republic.
Okay, now let's look at a second, and maybe even more intense area where these ideas clash, the government's use of force against its own people.
So another argument we see floating around today is the defense of state agents who use lethal force, even in situations where the citizen involved is unarmed. The justification you usually hear revolves around maintaining order or, punishing someone for not complying. This has a direct and honestly a pretty chilling historical parallel, the Boston Massacre. You had British soldiers, the state agents of their time, who fired on a crowd of colonists and killed 5 of them. And the Loyalists, they defended the soldiers' actions. They argued it was necessary to maintain order against what they called an unruly mob. The Patriots, on the other hand, saw it as the ultimate act of government tyranny. And this gets to the very heart of another core principle. Is the government's authority based on the rule of force, its ability to make you obey through violence, or is it based on the rule of law, where everyone, and that includes government agents, is held accountable through due process? That very question is what the Patriots fought an entire war over.
So when we put all these pieces together, we arrive at what we're calling the loyalist paradox.
Look, the historical record is crystal clear. The patriot mindset is all about questioning authority, protecting dissent, and demanding the government restrain itself. The loyalist mindset, that's about revering authority, punishing dissent, and justifying state violence, all for the sake of order. So the paradox is when modern movements that wrap themselves in the flag of patriotism start championing ideas that align perfectly with the historical loyalists.
Which leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought. 1776 was the year of the Declaration of Independence, a radical, revolutionary act against state power. But 1775? That was the year before, when the king's word was law and his soldiers could pretty much act with impunity. So the question this whole historical comparison forces us to ask is this: when we talk about patriotism today, which year's spirit are we really trying to capture?